the entire season I've been waiting for this game for this very reason. I've got a huge Miami contingent,
right?
And Clemson did to Miami. I'm not going to say I predicted that, but I didn't think that Miami was prepared for that game.
Right.
I thought they would be able to hang a little bit better, but the schedule set up to where Clemson's here and everybody else that Miami was playing was in that 45, 50, 55 range in the country.
Yep.
Virginia Techs and the NC States and the Virginias and the Pitts and on down the line. Everybody's pretty much about the same.
Right.
And they're clearly better than those teams. Sometimes they play down to them and almost lose, like the Virginia Tech and NC State games. And NC State, to their credit, 8-3 this year. But from a talent standpoint, that there was just this huge gap in their schedule. So I was finally wanting to see them play somebody supposedly on their level.
Right.
I think if they play 10 times, North Carolina is not going to take them to the woodshed like this every time. But it's still an alarming statement made against this Miami offense and defense. They just got obliterated on both sides of the ball.
It was shocking. I mean, it really was. It wasn't shocking that North Carolina won the game. It was shocking that they scored 60-plus points. It was shocking that Miami gave up a school record of over 770 yards in this game. It was shocking that they allowed not one, but two rushers to go over 200 yards. One of them, in Michael Carter, goes over 300 yards in this football game. We knew North Carolina had a really good rushing attack with Carter and Javonte Williams, but this was just preposterous. And on top of that, Sam Howell throws for almost 250 yards. It was a game that I thought would be a lot more competitive than it was. And if you're a Miami fan and you look at this and you're wondering, maybe you were on the fence as to whether or not Manny Diaz was really the answer, right? A lot of people were wondering that last year before the year when he had to take over kind of on the fly. Not a lot of people were expecting Mark Richt to kind of go out the way that he did. Even a guy like Cam Underwood, Mark, who I know you talk to frequently. I mean, Cam said that, the hire of Manny Diaz was kind of a situation where Miami was between a rock and a hard place because Mark Richt, when he was approached saying that he had to make a change to, the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach being his son, he was like, nah, I'm good. I'm just going to retire instead. Well, Mark Richt said, all right, see you later. And Manny Diaz, who was on the job with Temple for a week, comes back over to Miami. And a lot of people are like, okay, this is good for continuity, but is he really ready to lead a program of, on par with the Hurricanes? I mean, Miami and Temple are two totally different football programs, and he had only ever been a coordinator. So it just didn't really seem like a situation where Miami got their guy and got the benefit of doing this full process of evaluating coaches and candidates and that sort of thing. It was almost like they knew Manny Diaz would come back. They knew he would accept the head coaching job, and he did. And Miami, give them credit, last year, even though there were some tough losses in there, they looked like they were playing hard. This year got off to a really good start. Obviously, Miami ranked number 10 in the country entering today. I thought that was probably a little bit high, but I just did not expect this to happen today, where they just look totally uncompetitive against a team that, quite honestly, they should be able to hang with. And them not even really putting up a fight was surprising. And I think for the common Miami fan who didn't really know if Manny Diaz was the guy or not, these are the types of games that are going to stick out in your head if you're a Hurricanes fan, right? The games where, Miami is expected to, beat an opponent on par with them or better than them, or at least be competitive. And Miami wasn't really all that competitive against Clemson earlier in the year, like you mentioned, Mark. And now this only other game where they had a team that was ranked, that was very good, that was able to put up numbers on offense, goes out and just steamrolls you. And you have to be infuriated today if you're a Miami fan. It was shocking.
I was also surprised in the manner in which they steamrolled them because, as you mentioned, Sam Howell threw 19 passes. He didn't have to throw 45 times. If you would have told me, okay, North Carolina won this game, again, I'm not surprised. Miami was a 3-point favorite and at home. But if I thought it was going to be a great game. And Sam Howell only has to throw 19 times, and they basically hand the ball to Williams and Carter back and forth, and they just maybe run 3 or 4 different types of running plays.
Yeah.
and they just physically just beat them up, just battered them.
Yeah, it was shocking. I mean, it was. Look, if you told me going into today that North Carolina was going to score 60 points, 60 plus points, win the football game, if you told me that going into today, I would have thought that Sam Howell would have thrown for 500 yards.
Oh, with those receivers, he just bombed away the whole day. Yep.
Right. I wouldn't have thought that they gave up 500 yards on the ground. Like the way in which they were dominated. I mean, this wasn't like a situation where high flying offense, Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown, Bo Corrales. No, it wasn't that at all. It was, we have really two really good running backs. We know we have two really good running backs. We're going to give them the ball, ground and pound, grind it out. I mean, it was shocking. It was, we're going to come downhill. We're going to hit you in the mouth. And Miami is not used to being dominated like that on defense. And that was one of the worst performances I've seen out of Miami in probably 20 or 25 years defensively. It was horrific. I was shocked.
And it was on both sides of the ball. So a North Carolina defense that has talent in areas, but they've not played well.
Right.
So they give up their 40 points every week. But the final score of 26 points on Miami's side does not indicate, this game's 41-10.
Right.
At one point, North Carolina shut them down pretty much defensively as well.
Yeah, and you know what? That's going to be lost on this game, I think, because of how well the offense played for North Carolina. But I think you're totally right. I mean, the defense for the Tar Heels deserves a lot of credit. Jay Bateman's defense has been really up and down all year. Like you mentioned, some talented position groups, but not a talented unit, like altogether cohesively, right? We talked about that with Virginia Tech earlier. This is like a more experienced unit in North Carolina that has
recruited great, but those guys are still just really young. They're not.
It's been a really up and down season for that defense. And for North Carolina to come out and play the way they did today on that side of the football was really impressive. Jay Bateman deserves a lot of credit for his game plan. I think on top of that, too, like North Carolina's offense doing what they were able to do in the first half really gave the defense some confidence to kind of pin their ears back and go after the quarterback. And, De'Ara King was in a tough spot, too, today because now, your defense hasn't really shown up and you got to kind of carry the offense on your shoulders, which is what he's been doing all year anyway. But now you're in a spot against a really talented offense and you're going to have to try to put up a bunch of points to keep up. I talked about this on the Basketball Conference podcast with Joey Weaver, Mark. We were previewing this game. And the one thing that we did get right about this, I picked Miami to win the game. Joey picked North Carolina. Both of us thought this game would be competitive. The one thing we agreed on and the one thing that ended up being true in this game is that if this got into a shootout, that 1,000% favored North Carolina. And little did I know that that Miami wouldn't even get to 30 points and North Carolina would score over 60. Neither one of us saw that coming, but the high-scoring game certainly favored the Tar Heels, and it did play out that way.